guys, welcome to A Novel Affair.
The bookish podcast where we kiss and tell about our torrid affairs with fictional characters.
So grab a drink and get ready for some pure, unadulterated fun.
Today we are discussing the first of three novels in Sarah J. Maas's most recently published Crescent City Trilogy, House of Earth and Blood. And this is the first of two episodes on this book if you're joining us via podcast.
And remember to get the in depth, uncensored version of our review. Be sure to check out our podcast and learn about all of our favorite scenes, especially the steamy ones. Just look for the link below.
So I'm really excited about this one. This is one of my favorite series. And Sarah J. Maas, the author, is probably only unknown to you if you've been living under a rock. She is most well known for A Court of Thorns and Roses, or ACOTAR, as we will likely refer to it, and also the Throne of Glass series. The popularity of A Court of Thorns and Roses, it's been like the gateway drug for
Yeah.
smut, romantasy, a lot of people just getting back into reading again. And because it's so overdone, I think I'm glad we're doing Crescent City because it's a different, newer, um, and it's only three books, but it's three really long books. So Destiny is
800-page books,
Destiny's
to
being
be
a
clear.
trooper with me on this one. Um, Really quick, there's no trigger warnings in her books, but out of complete, responsibility and just as a reference, this series contains drug use, drug abuse, torture, murder, terrorism, and slavery. So that's not the kind of trigger warnings that we usually have. They're usually some weird kink off the wall that's in there, but
Yeah.
these are just, your standard rated R trigger warnings.
Yeah. Usually we end up with like sexual trigger warnings.
Yes, exactly.
This one is not about the trigger warnings on this are not about the sex, to be
Yeah.
clear.
And this is a slow ass burn. So I am going to go ahead and just own up to that one right up front.
Yeah, I'm at 400 pages and not nary a pickle, okay?
I knew that was coming. I knew, and I knew I was going to pay for it. I fully accept any and all complaints for that. It drives me nuts too, but I also like it. So, um,
The plot is good enough to make up for it, but
agreed.
my dark romance self is starting to get impatient with it.
Uh, Understood. So the genre, I actually was did just a little quick search on this. Did not know this was a specific genre, but it is a galactic empire science fiction. It's
I
also
had
an
never heard of that genre, but it sounds like it fits it so well.
Yeah, well, and when I hear that, I think Star Wars. But I'm like, I mean, I guess this could be Star Warsy if you in a Sarah J. Maas kind of way. But it's
It
also
also
a
it made me think of Cowboy Bebop.
yes.
That's
Oh,
what I thought.
points for that reference. Points for that reference. It's also obviously an action adventure romance. And it is in a limited third person perspective. So we
Yeah.
do get the point of view of two different characters, but it's written in third person. Um, I don't normally like third person. I know you really don't normally like third person, but
Yeah, I struggle with it.
I really liked the way this is done because I'm not completely outside of the character's thoughts. Um,
Yeah.
it's more of like a grammar thing than a point of view thing in this book.
For me, there's like a disconnect with third person because I'm not reading it like as myself like you do with a first person. But again, it's one of those books where the plot is so good, I can overlook it. It just took me a little while to get into the third person headspace.
Yes, and speaking of taking a while to get into, I want to talk a little bit about, before we get into the plot summary or any of that, I want to talk a little bit about the world building and just kind of do a recap and lay out like what are we working here when it comes to time and space and all of that. And so magic. So the entire modern civilization structure that's built there, it runs on a power source that they call a first light, which is actually magic. Um, any magical being or Vanir, when they come of age, they go through a ritual called the drop, and in the drop they come into their full power, and that is the point where they become immortal. So they stop aging at that point. So usually, once a Vanir is like a full adult, and they can choose to do it whenever they want, but that's when this happens. When they do the drop, a portion of their power is siphoned off. That very first burst of magical power is siphoned off and donated like to society to power everything, and that's why it's called First Light. And
The drop confused me for a while. They just kept
yes,
mentioning the drop, but there was no details on the drop for like 30 pages, and I was like, what the hell
what does
is
that even
this?
mean? And as we get farther into it, when they talk about the actual mechanics of the drop, it's even more to wrap your mind around. So we don't even go there yet. um, and within Midgard, there's a couple continents that get referenced. Pangea is a continent. It's a different continent than where this takes place. Um, and Valbara, which is where we are in the city of Lunathian. And as a comparison, think of Lunathian as like New York City. It's a big
Yeah.
metropolis. It's actually on the seaside. Um, it's divided into, like, New York is divided into boroughs: Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens. Um, so is Lunathian.
I'm
And
glad you made that comparison because the whole time I was reading it and like referencing back to the map, I was like, yeah, this feels very New Yorky.
yes, and it's probably another reason I love it so much, because I love New York. But something that can be confusing also is that Crescent City is the same thing as Lunathian. It's like a nickname. So, like, we call New York the Big Apple. And it's just because the river that goes through Lunathian shaped like a crescent the way it comes through the city. So it's just a nickname. So
So,
let's cast the book.
well, with that being said, yes, Bryce Quinlan is you.
Yes.
I mean, there are so many similarities that as I'm reading, I'm having to mentally disconnect your face from hers in my head because sometimes it makes it really awkward, but you're who I picture cuz
Yeah,
it
valid.
I know you so well and it's so similar to her that that's just what popped into my head when I was reading it. I'm trying to get your image out before I reach the smut part of the book.
That's valid. That's valid. Um, so I did not cast me as Bryce because I figured I wouldn't be quite that self-centered. But let's trade off character by character, and I'll start. I would cast Isla Fisher as Bryce, and as a reference, Isla Fisher was in Confessions of a Shopaholic. She's in Wedding Crashers. She's been in more recent stuff, but she's also who I would pick to play me if they made a movie about my life. So it is still a little bit self centered.
I had actually thought about her too, like as Bryce. You're you're who pops into my head more, but that is a like really good comparison. Especially because I even went and looked at the fan art side by side with Isla Fisher, and there are it very similar looks and vibes between the
Yes,
two.
agreed. So who did you pick for your Bryce?
I picked you
Yay!
because you're legit like who I picture as I'm reading it.
That would
But
be so
again, I'm
fun
trying to like
to
move
like not.
out of your
Yeah.
face. Yeah.
Okay, so then you go first. Who did you cast for Danica?
I thought of like Uma Thurman in Kill Bill. Like the
That's a
vibe
good
just
one.
very badass, very vengeful, very smart ass one-liner comments. Like
Yeah,
that's what I felt it was.
that's a good one. So that makes me question if I chose the right one. So I have, I'm going to change my mind. So I'm calling an audible. I would cast Scarlett Johansson in a very Black Widow sort of way.
I thought about her in what's the movie where you take the drug and you unlock like 100% of your brain?
Lucy.
Atomic something? She has like the short blonde
Oh,
hair.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not Lucy. It's another one, but I've seen it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
It
my
I thought about
original,
her too.
my original was Jennifer Lawrence because of her sense of humor and her just general like I don't care what anybody thinks or I'm going to be very real about this. But
Yeah.
she's not very actiony and I feel like Danica would be actiony.
Yeah. For sure. So
Okay,
who did you choose for Hunt?
so this is going to shock no one. Um I mentally read Hunt as my husband, but since none of our viewers are going to know him, I choose Tom Hardy.
Oh, that's yeah. That's good.
I think he would just do a wonderful job.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So,
In
tell me yours.
in my head. Okay, so picture this. All right. We're going to take Henry Cavill's body
Of course. Of course.
and we're going to slap Damon Salvatore's head from Vampire Diaries and his personality on Henry Cavill.
Okay. Well, just for the record,
That's what we're doing.
all of Destiny's book boyfriends are different versions of Henry Cavill.
It could also be the Aranke dude.
Yeah, that's true.
Him too.
That's true.
Okay. I have
Okay.
two options here. Today it was Henry Cavill
Yeah.
with Damien Salvatore's head
I'd
slapped
say
on
I'll
him.
take it. I'll take that all day long.
We're
Um
building a book boyfriend, okay?
so what about my next character, and I want you to tell me yours first, is Micah Domitus, which is the governor archangel.
I chose Brad Pitt, but Brad Pitt from Interview with a Vampire.
Okay.
Like the young Brad Pitt with like the long
The long
hair.
hair and all that.
Yeah. But
So
still kind of mysterious and yeah.
I picked Russell Crowe. I feel like he would
I
play
can see that.
a good bad guy in this. Or asshole, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So, Rune Dannon, it's our last one for this book. I'm going to pick more characters because we have a ton of characters to choose from. Um, but I'm excited about mine because I really hit the nail on the head when it comes to what I vision. Like, this matches my vision perfectly. And it's Jared Leto.
I can see that.
That's who I picture. And I have a little bit of a crush on Rune Dannon, just a little bit. He is definitely my we listen and we don't judge. And it's weird because he's related to Bryce. So, whatever. It's fine. What about you?
Uh, okay. I chose the guy from TikTok. He usually does like all of the resand audios. He's always in
Okay.
like the button up, the black button
Yes.
up with the hair. We're gonna put a picture like right here.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Um, because I can't remember his name, but I know who he is, and I have a feeling a lot of book talk girls are gonna be like, I know exactly who that is.
I do. I know exactly who you're talking about. But,
Yeah,
I go
but
hard
that's who
for
I pictured as him.
I go hard for Resand. I do.
Something about
So,
him.
are you ready to get into it? Into it?
Oh boy, it's so much, but
It
yes.
is. Okay. So, we start out. Bryce works at Griffin Antiquities, which is a magical art gallery slash antique shop, very high end, owned by a sorceress, Jessica Roga. And she has in this Griffin Antiquities, there's a secret library um, of forbidden magical books hidden in the basement. And so part of Griffin Antiquities is protecting that library. No one's supposed to be allowed down there. And she has two little sidekicks who I love. Um, Lahaba, who is a fire sprite, and she is actually
He's so cute.
owned by Jessica because she's the fire sprites were their citizenship status was taken from them in a previous conflict, and so they are actually all slaves. And so Lahaba owns, I mean, Jessica owns Lahaba, and she's a sassy little fire sprite, and I love her. And
Yep.
then they have a pet chimera, which is named Syrinx. And I think he's way more sentient than like a dog, but he
Yeah.
definitely fulfills like this pet role. And
Yeah.
he's pretty adorable in my opinion.
The
Um,
way that I saw it was like if you take a trained monkey's brain and put it in a dog. Because it's smart in the way that monkeys are incredibly smart, but
yes,
very much acts like a puppy.
correct.
Like
That's
just
like
wants loving and pets and treats.
yes, 100%. Okay, so Bryce is at work, and we meet Bryce's BFF, Danica Fendir, and she is the leader of the Pack of Devils, which is a like small group within the larger pack of the Wolf Shifters, and they are a law enforcement. They're in charge of law enforcement in Moonwood, but also like across Lunathian at large. And we find out in this first scene that they actually recently got drunk and got matching tattoos on their backs. And they say, through love, all is possible. And it's written like in this ancient, fancy language that Danica found online because she thought that would make it less cheesy. and and I love that. Um, and the reason that Danica is there is she tells us she's about to go and um, deal with an issue that's come up. She had previously caught and captured a human rebel terrorist, and his name is Philip Briggs, and he is set to be released from prison. And she's about to go to the city council and protest his release with the city district leaders. So that just kind of sets up like kind of the environment that we're dealing with.
I had a hard time trying to picture Juniper. Like, I had to Google fan art because my imagination, just for some reason, made it look so cartoony and cheesy. And I was like, I know this is not how it's supposed to look.
Yeah, I also have a hard time envisioning because she's a fawn, but she's got like a humanoid form.
Yeah. But she's got
So,
hooves. So I'm
right.
like, okay, but how far do the hooves go?
Yeah, I
The whole
agree.
leg? And how does she dance with those? So I had to Google the fan art to see how other people envisioned it because it just wasn't clicking in my head.
I completely agree that it's a weird one. We meet Isaiah Tiberian and Hunt Athalar, and they are two angels who we learn had previously participated in a rebellion against this existing political regime, and the rebellion failed. And so they are now enslaved to serve the archangels for all eternity. Um, and Hunt Athalar is the Governor Micah's personal assassin. And he's famous throughout this world because he has the power of lightning, and that's an extremely rare power. And his killing skills, as well as his lightning, have earned him the nickname the Umbra Mortis, which means the shadow of death. And it's such a cool name. Such a cool name. Big fan of that.
Love it.
Here, we actually learn that Rune is not her cousin, he's her half brother. They have the same dad, so we learn her biological father is actually the Autumn King. And she, as the illegitimate daughter, um, is not claimed publicly. And so that's why they tell everybody that they're distant cousins.
Which she also prefers it that way.
She,
She doesn't want to have anything to do with the royals or the politics of all of it. She just wants to live a normal freaking life. So she's like, yeah,
yes.
we're cousins. Leave it at that.
And she is fine with it, but it's shitty because the whole reason the Autumn King wants it this way is because she's half human.
Yeah. Which, I mean, his own fault. He's the one that did it with a human.
I know, right? Like
Like,
he's an infuriating character. I hate him. He's or are back in the point of view of Hunt Athalar. And he's living his, triari life. And Micah has offered Hunt the chance to earn his freedom by carrying out the same number of kills as angels and archangels that were killed in the rebellion that he was part of. And that,
all of the lives that he took, and also inadvertently his soldiers took.
yes,
So every angel on the opposing side of his that died, he has to pay back the death for a death.
which is 2,217.
It's a whole lot.
It's a lot.
I mean, it's a good thing he's going to live for hundreds of years, but
True. But as
he,
a marker for the pace that he's going, in 4 years of service with Micah, Hunt has murdered 82 people.
yeah,
So while that's a lot, it's not a lot when it comes to 2,000 people.
yeah.
um, so we kind of see that he has been through a lot of shit, a lot of trauma, a lot of loss, and he does not have a bright prospect for his future. in terms
Yeah.
of he's going to be in his situation for a while.
And granted, this is the most freedom he's had since the rebellion ended. He is allowed to leave the continuum and walk amongst the streets and eat normal food. I mean, he's not being imprisoned 24/7 in a dungeon being tortured. So he does have some semblance of freedom compared to what he had with Sandriel.
Correct. And it's really just because Micah's like not a regular slave owner, he's a cool slave owner. And so he
Yeah.
like
A slave owner's a slave owner.
yeah, gives them kind of a almost an illusion of
Yeah.
autonomy.
He also has his mother's Fey abilities for shadows and mists versus his father's fire Fey abilities, which also pisses the king off, which I love because, like,
And I'm so
fuck
glad you
you.
said that because Rune is our shadow daddy. And
Yeah.
I'm so like torn because obviously like Hunt and Bryce are really our main characters, but like
Mm-hmm.
I love Rune and I love his story and I think he's totally hot in my head and his shadows seem really cool. I'm just
Prior to reading this, throughout all of book talk, the sound, the audio of Rune Danon, crown prince of the Valbarian Fae, was used like millions of times. And so when I went into this book, I thought he was going to be the main character because
oh how
not once did
funny.
I ever see anybody mention Hunt.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know if I've actually heard that audio. Now I'm going to have to go track it down.
It was everywhere on my feed like earlier
I
this
wonder
year, I
what
think.
quote it
I don't know
was.
how I ended up in it because romantasy isn't usually what comes up on my book talk. It's usually
Yeah.
dark romance.
Yeah.
But it did. And to the extent that I thought the book was going to be about him, I never once saw Hunt. I had to go back and read the summary because I was like, is
What's
Rune
going on
not
here? Yeah.
the main character? He's not. It's Hunt. It's Hunt and Bryce.
I will say though,
So it kind of
these
threw me for a loop.
these side characters get very full story arcs. So,
Yeah.
although Rune's not the technical main character, we're going to follow him as a main character, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I'm excited. I held off my reread, re-listen as well cuz I wanted to make sure I didn't blur where this ended and the cuz I do that a lot. Especially if I speed read through something, I'll have a hard time knowing where one book ended mentally.
That
Um,
is why I could not pick up the second book
mhm.
because it took me one evening to get through the second half of this book.
Yeah, it goes by
Like the
fast.
first book took me 3 days, but the second half took me one evening to read 400 pages.
Yep.
I could not read it. I was up till 3 a.m. and even Jesse walked in there. He's like, "Are you coming to bed soon?" Which Jesse stays up late, okay? He's a night owl. So
Yeah.
that was when I finally looked at the clock and was like, it's 3 o'clock. I have 20 pages left. Nope, not coming to bed.
Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah, I'll be
not
there
happening.
when I get there. It's definitely one
Yep.
of those books. So, okay, I'm excited, interested, ready to hear your ratings now that you've read the whole book.
My overall rating is, I'm gonna say a 8 out of 10.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good considering you didn't get a pickle.
You'll see why it's an 8 out of 10 when we get to the breakdown
Yeah.
of this.
So I am going to say it's a 10 out of 10. This is one of my favorite series. This is one of my favorite. Like, this book is so good. Um, but that's probably not a surprise.
Yeah, with the way you've talked it up for the last couple of years, I'm not surprised by that rating at all.
And then just to follow that up, for me, the content of this was also a 10 out of 10.
For me, the content was a 9.5 out of 10.
That's
There
fair.
were a couple of things that I would have been like, okay. But the reason, listen, guys, the spice. This may be the lowest rating on spice that I ever give, but this was like a 1.5, a 2 out of 10, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair.
There
That's
was
fair.
like nothing in there. There was hardly even sexual tension. Like, there were a couple of scenes where there was sexual tension and you got a little something out of it. But for 800 pages, there was probably collectively 20 pages of spice. And it wasn't even like 2 jalapeno spice, okay?
I I disagree. I think there was sexual tension for me. So I actually put this at a 7 out of 10 because of the sexual tension and because of just how Hunt is and how Bryce is, and I really like their connection. And so that played into it for me, obviously. So, but the romance, which is probably going to be shocking to everyone, I also rated a 10 out of 10.
See, that's why I say that, like, there was no sexual tension. Because for me, it was all the way it came across, it was all romantic. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it was, like I said, it was probably about 20 pages collectively of lust and desire and passion. Romance, there was a whole lot of romance. It just wasn't a whole lot of sexual tension. So I gave romance a 9 out of 10 because there was a whole lot of that despite all of the grieving that was going on.
Yeah,
There
and
just wasn't smut.
that's a fair distinction.
Now, the writing, I give a 10 out of 10.
Same.
She outdid herself once again. Props to Moss because that she hit it on the head.
Yeah, I like this series even better than Akatar, and I love Akatar. It was like my gateway drug. And I think it has to do with the characters in this one. I think they're put in a I don't know, they're just so relatable. More relatable than the Akatar characters. So shocker, they also got a 10 out of 10 for me on this.
Characters, I'm going to also give a 10 out of 10. And here's my reasoning for that. It's not necessarily because I just love all of the characters, but I typically do not like third person point of views. Not a fan of it. I can't connect with the characters the way that I can in a first person point of view.
Yeah.
And but it's also because when there's so many characters and it's third person point of views, I have a hard time keeping up with whose head I'm technically in because
Mhm.
even in third person, you're still viewing it from somebody's point of view,
Sure.
somebody's inner thoughts. But the distinction is so little with third person point of view. But with this book, I didn't even need to go back to see, like, reread the first paragraph to see whose point of view we're looking through. It was the characters were so well defined that just by them speaking, by the way the dialogue and the inner dialogue was written, you knew who it was.
I agree. I'm not usually like if I had to choose, I wouldn't choose third person, but this is the best I've ever seen it done.
Yeah, I have
Truly.
to agree with that.
And
The only other book that I was able to get through that was third person point of view is The Witcher.
really.
Yeah, but again, it's one of those books that's it's third person point of view, but it's always in The Witcher's point of view.
Sure.
So you're following him around. You're not following the whole cast around like this book is.
Yeah. Well, and in addition, for, you know, just my general, is that the characters are so well developed, and you equally want to know what's going to happen in their story as to Bryson Hunt's story. And I love that. I think that that's hard to do. There's inevitably, when you have this many characters, it's hard to make them all so robust, and that was really well done here.
Yeah. There are two ways that this book could have been written. This is one of them, third person with a backstory in everyone's lives and everyone's storyline. Or it could have been done in first person. The books would have been smaller and everybody would have gotten their own series. But I feel like doing it that way, despite there being more written about them, it would have been missing something.
I agree.
Because this plot was so massive that it would have been missing something had it been done the other way. So anybody who struggles with third person point of view, just know like this is not as bad as what you may think.
For sure.
But that is a wrap for this episode. As always, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our take on this steamy read, and we will see y'all next week on A Novel Affair,
where we will be discussing the next book in the Crescent City series, House of Sky and Breath.
Don't forget to head over to our podcast to listen to a full breakdown of this book and many others with spoilers and discussions, and you can find that link in the comments.